You think you're awakening. The smoke swirls. The silence deepens. Your thoughts slow down, and suddenly everything seems to glow with hidden meaning. You convince yourself, this must be enlightenment. But what if it isn't? What if the thing you've come to depend on for clarity is the very thing clouding your soul? What if the heightened awareness you feel is not spiritual ascent, but neurological confusion, dressed up in poetic illusions? What if the peace isn't real peace, just sedation? It's a brutal paradox, how something that feels so transcendent can secretly be a cage. Weed has a way of seducing the mind and convincing the soul it has found light, even while leading it deeper into the shadows. You tell yourself you're thinking more deeply, but you revisit the same thoughts again and again, circling like smoke around a dying fire. You say you're closer to the divine, but prayer becomes infrequent. Discipline evaporates, and your connection to others frays. You feel elevated, but you're detached from your body, your purpose, your edge. It feels good. It feels gentle. It feels safe. But what if you're floating further and further away from the very things your soul was meant to encounter raw, without the filter of chemicals or illusion? Can a drug ever be a true companion on a spiritual journey? Can any altered state replace the sacred discipline of inner transformation? If you need a substance to access your higher self, was it ever really you? Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Is it possible that in your attempt to elevate yourself spiritually, you're doing just that, avoiding the real work? Here's the most unsettling question of all. What if the high you're chasing is not an awakening, but a spiritual bypass, one that delays your actual growth and numbs your pain just enough to keep you stuck? We don't ask these questions to judge you, but to wake you. Because if the soul truly desires light, it must learn to walk through the darkness sober. And if you're brave enough to keep reading or listening, you'll begin to see the contours of a deeper truth. Not the one sold in memes or wrapped in smoke, but the truth that shatters illusions, challenges your comforts, and calls your spirit higher than you've ever imagined. You've tasted the counterfeit. Are you ready to face the cost? Now, let's uncover the roots of this lie and why it's far more psychological, cultural, and spiritual than you've been led to believe. You never intended to deceive yourself. You just wanted peace, expansion, some kind of relief from the weight of the world or the weight of your own mind. And when you first felt that warm drift into stillness, it felt like you had found something sacred, something healing. But what if that relief is a mask, not a solution to your suffering, but a retreat from the responsibility to understand it? Friedrich Nietzsche warned of this when he wrote, "People don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed." And this is the hidden root of the weed spirituality trap: illusion, masquerading as insight, comfort that masquerades as healing, stagnation that masquerades as enlightenment. The psychological need behind it is deeply human. We are, all of us, terrified of pain, emotional pain, existential pain, spiritual pain, and in our modern world, saturated with noise and expectation, we are desperate for an off switch. Something to numb the panic, something to feel connected without doing the inner excavation. Weed offers exactly that, a gentle dissociation, a soft separation from the sharp edges of life. But what does that mean for your soul? Carl Jung spoke often about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, avoid, and deny. True transformation, he said, does not come from transcendence, but integration. You don't rise by escaping yourself. You rise by going into your darkness and bringing it into the light. Weed, though, often interrupts that process. It creates the illusion of confrontation. You feel like you're exploring deep truths, but you're too sedated to do anything with them. You realize a painful truth about yourself, but the motivation to act dissolves before the insight can become change. You see your trauma, but you can't hold space for it sober, so it floats away, and you never truly heal. This is not to deny that cannabis has moments of clarity, or even that it can serve medicinal or emotional purposes in some contexts. But what we're exploring here is not its usefulness in pain management or anxiety treatment. It's the myth that weed is a reliable, sustainable path to spiritual growth. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "Compassion is the basis of morality." True spiritual growth is not just about feeling divine, it's about becoming more compassionate, more disciplined, more present in your responsibilities to others. Yet the chronic user often becomes isolated, passive, internally consumed, not because they are evil or selfish, but because the drug slowly numbs the muscles of moral agency. And what about identity? As Aldous Huxley warned in Brave New World, the greatest threat to freedom is not overt tyranny, but subtle pleasure, the kind that pacifies you. Weed becomes a way to stay comfortable in your discontent. And over time, you stop asking hard questions. You stop seeking the divine in real prayer, real relationship, and real suffering. You light up instead. And the flicker of divine connection you feel becomes a counterfeit comfort that delays the uncomfortable but necessary reckoning with your true self. You are not weak for having chosen this. You are human. But if you're still reading, there's a part of you that knows this isn't it. You weren't meant to be numb. You were meant to burn with purpose. There is nothing inherently evil about the plant. What's dangerous is the dependence. The way it whispers, you don't have to face that pain right now. Maybe later. And later never comes. Now ask yourself, have I confused sedation with surrender? Have I traded spiritual discipline for chemical ease? Is the peace I feel making me stronger or softer? Am I building something inside me or simply floating? These aren't just questions, they're spiritual detonators, and they prepare the ground for the deeper truth you're about to see. This habit, this cycle, this illusion has consequences far beyond what you felt. It shapes your emotions, your relationships, your destiny, quietly, invisibly. In the next section, we'll uncover exactly how and why breaking free isn't just a choice. It's a spiritual imperative. It doesn't scream. It doesn't knock things over or announce itself with fury. No, the consequences of this path are far more insidious. They don't come like a wave. They come like a fog. Slow, quiet, almost comforting. You think you're just chilling, but piece by piece, day by day, something sacred within you is slipping so subtly that you barely notice. It's not just your memory, your drive, your clarity. It's your soul's edge, that inner sharpness, the fire in your bones that once made you hunger for meaning. You're not lazy. You're dulled. And worse, you're okay with being dulled. That's what makes this trap so potent. Not that it cripples you, but that it convinces you you're fine. You start building a spiritual identity out of sedation. You use words like vibe, energy, frequency. But your actual life, it's stuck in spiritual inertia. You're not becoming more grounded. You're floating above your wounds, above your responsibilities, above your power. The brain adapts. Neuroplasticity ensures that the more you lean into this form of escape, the more your mind rewires itself around it. The dopamine cycles change. What once brought you joy now barely moves you, unless you're high. The clarity you once felt during a sunset, a prayer, a long conversation with someone you love, faded, muted. Weed doesn't just numb your pain, it numbs your capacity for awe. And here's the devastating twist. You begin to mistake detachment for peace. You think you're spiritually above the chaos of life. But in reality, you've stepped out of the arena entirely. You've stopped feeling deeply, and you've called it enlightenment. Think of what Jesus said in Matthew 13:15. For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed. You were not meant for dullness. You were meant for holy alertness, a life awake, a soul set ablaze. But weed over time drapes a slow veil over that fire. And here's where the consequences compound. Your relationships suffer because you're no longer fully present. Your creativity suffers because the muse no longer visits a numbed mind. Your identity suffers because you no longer struggle, question, or strive deeply. And perhaps most dangerously, your discernment suffers. In the Old Testament, the prophets were watchmen, sober, vigilant, spiritually tuned to both heaven and the times. But how can you be a watchman when your spirit is constantly drifting? We've replaced sacred stillness with chemical sedation. And in doing so, we've dulled the very senses that were meant to hear God, feel others, and stand strong in battle. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. But when you're high all the time, you lose your why, the hunger, the pain, the longing that once drove you toward meaning. They're muted, and without that hunger, your spirit shrinks. Look at society. Millions of young souls, disillusioned with shallow religion, seeking spiritual truth and finding it in a cloud of smoke. They think they've exited the matrix, but all they've done is enter another illusion, a quieter one, a softer one, but no less binding. And here's the final twist of the knife. Weed doesn't just delay your awakening, it mimics it. You feel one with the universe, but have no intimacy with God. You feel centered, but have no direction. You feel calm, but have no courage. The ancient mystics fasted, prayed, wept, wandered, and wrestled with angels. You light up and sit still. And maybe, just maybe, that should tell you something. So let this discomfort rise. Let it hit you in the chest. Let it stir the embers that seduction has tried to suffocate. Because in the next section, you're going to confront a dangerous truth. You've been lied to, and it's time to rise up. Enough of the fog. Let's start there. Not with shame, not with guilt, with clarity, the kind that cuts like a blade through illusion. You were never meant to live in sedation. You were meant to live on fire. And now, after all the quiet numbing, the spiritual stagnation, the philosophical lullabies that made you think you were fine, something is stirring. It is rebellion, not against the world, but against the spiritual compromise you've accepted. Let's be honest. What if the calm you felt when high was never peace, but escape? What if the deep thoughts were just loops of existential laziness? What if the connection to the universe came at the cost of disconnection from yourself? This is not a war against weed. This is a war against false awakening. The revolution begins within. You've been told that freedom is doing whatever you want. But ask yourself, why is it that the more you chase freedom through indulgence, the more enslaved you become to the thing you indulge in? The rebellion starts when you stop obeying your cravings and start following your calling. And calling never feels like a craving. It feels like conviction. It is not loud, it is deep. Let's take the wisdom of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He said, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. That's the hidden addiction, not just to substances, but to avoidance. You've been distracting yourself from the work your soul came here to do. And the lie that weed makes me more spiritual. That's a cover for spiritual avoidance dressed up in mysticism. You don't need a crutch, you need a cross. Real spiritual awakening always involves suffering, not because pain is good, but because pain awakens us to the truth that something must change. Jesus didn't numb himself on the cross. He bore the full weight of the world's darkness, and through that, light was born. Do you really think your healing will come by avoiding pain? It's time to feel again. You will cry. You will shake. You will mourn what you wasted, but you will also awaken. Let the words of 1 Peter 5:8 pierce your mind. Be sober-minded. Be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. This isn't just about sobriety from drugs. This is about sobriety of soul, sobriety of thought, sobriety of purpose. You cannot fight spiritual battles when your armor is made of smoke. Be the mindset shift you weren't taught. You don't need to be high to experience the divine. You just need to be present. Every breath is sacred. Every moment is mystical if you are fully awake in it. God doesn't need THC to reach you. He needs your attention. Your rebellion is choosing depth over dopamine. Your rebellion is saying, I will no longer trade revelation for relaxation. I will no longer call sedation spiritual. I will walk through pain if it leads to purpose. This is what they never told you, that the soul doesn't evolve through escapism. It evolves through encounter. You want altered states? Try prayer. Try silence. Try fasting. Try obedience. Try the terrifying act of being completely sober in a world that thrives on distraction. History was changed by the sober. The prophets were not high when they heard God. The martyrs were not stoned when they faced the lions. The saints were not chilled out when they walked into fire. They were sober, terrified, and blazing with purpose. That's the paradox. It is not ease that brings you to God. It is surrender. It is sacrifice. It is showing up fully in this one sacred, brutal, beautiful life. This is rebellion. Not against weed, but against wasting your calling in a haze. Step into the fire. So what now? You quit. Yes, cold. Yes, hard. Yes, now. You start asking your soul real questions. What was I trying to avoid? What part of me is afraid to feel? What deeper truth have I refused to face? You make your life a temple, not a trap. You pray, you study, you build, you suffer, you heal. You become. This isn't about being clean. This is about being awake. The fog has been your prison. Now let pain become your portal. Let discomfort baptize you. Let the sacred discomfort drag you back to your full self. Because the final truth is near. The one that breaks the last chain. Are you ready for it? What if everything you thought was spiritual was just another form of sedation? What if your pursuit of transcendence was a camouflage for your refusal to descend into your own pain? Here's the ultimate paradox. To rise, you must go down. To ascend, you must first descend into your shadows. And to know God, you must lose every false version of Him. You were never meant to escape this world through smoke. You were meant to awaken in it, raw, clear, and fully present. The final truth is simple, but it burns. You can't numb your way to enlightenment. Be what the soul has always known. In the quiet moments when the high fades, when the noise dies, there's something that whispers to you. It's faint, but it's relentless. It says, there is more. More than this haze. More than these recycled deep thoughts. More than the fleeting illusion of peace that disappears the moment reality taps your shoulder again. You were born with a memory inside you. A memory of presence, of light, of clarity that doesn't need to be lit, smoked, or swallowed. That's the ultimate truth. You were already wired for divine connection. You just forgot, not because you're broken, but because you were taught to seek outside what only grows within. The God who was there the whole time. God was never behind the curtain of your rituals. He wasn't hiding in the smoke or the silence after the buzz. He was in your aching questions. He was in the tears you cried when no one else saw. He was in your longing to feel something real again. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not the numbing, not the altering, the renewing. This is what no one told you. Spirituality isn't about leaving the world. It's about engaging it, eyes open, heart raw, spirit clean. Be the revelation that sets you free. Here's the moment everything flips. You don't need weed to feel. You don't need weed to think. You don't need weed to connect. You need sobriety to access your soul's true power. And sobriety isn't just the absence of substances. It's the presence of unfiltered truth. When you walk away from the high, you walk into a reality where the presence of God is not diluted, not delayed, not distorted. You wake up. And in that waking, you realize something radical. God was never far. You were just fogged. Your soul was never dead. It was just drowned. Be. A new life begins. This is the threshold. On one side, ease, numbness, and pseudo-spirituality. On the other, clarity, pain, truth, and transformation. But here's the divine irony. That pain you feared, it becomes your rebirth. You begin again, not as a consumer of experience, but as a creator of reality. Your prayers become electric. Your thoughts become sharp. Your heart begins to burn again. Because now you're not medicating your soul. You're listening to it. And when you do that long enough, without the weed, without the distraction, you'll hear the only voice that matters. Welcome back. I've been waiting for you. God. Be. The final invitation. So now the truth is yours, not a truth that comes with euphoria or forgetfulness, a truth that comes with weight, sacredness, and power. You can't unknow this now. You've seen what's behind the smoke. The real question is, will you keep numbing knowing what it costs? Or will you walk through the fire knowing who you'll become? This is not the end. It's the beginning of a soul finally stripped of illusion, naked, trembling, awake. Arise, let your spirit catch flame. Let your mind be renewed. Let the God you thought was distant become the breath in your lungs again. Because the greatest high is being fully alive.